I used to think if I just worked harder, talked less, kept my head down, learned how to throw a football the right way, maybe then he'd look at me the way he looked at my brothers. But no matter what I did, I was always just there. Not the favorite, not the prodigy, not the pride of the Rayburn name. Just Thomas. The quiet one, the tech kid, the one who messed with computers in a family of hands-on, salt-of-the-earth men. My dad, Hank Rayburn, was the kind of man who thought a strong back and a calloused hand meant something. He'd shake his head every time I brought home a trophy from a robotics meet or showed him the app I had built in high school. "That's nice, Tom, but when you gonna get a real job?" he'd ask, like he was joking, but not really. Meanwhile, Eric was fighting fires and getting front-page spreads in the local paper. Jason, coaching the high school football team, signing autographs at church barbecues. Me, I once fixed the neighbor's A/C with a custom diagnostic tool I'd coded myself, and no one said a word. He once told a family friend at a cookout, loud enough for me to hear, "Yeah, I've got 2 real sons and Tommy the indoor one." That line never left me. It branded itself on my spine and sat there, buried in every decision I made for the next 20 years. But here's the thing. You can only get ignored for so long before you stop trying to be seen and start building something that can't be overlooked. He didn't know it yet, but I was going to make sure that one day he'd have no choice but to see me. Growing up in the Rayburn house felt like being cast in a play where I never got a speaking role. I was always there, quietly, in the background, but never quite part of the main act. Our house in suburban Kentucky echoed with laughter, cheers, and the sounds of ESPN blaring from the living room. Dad was the ringleader of it all, proud and booming, always bragging about his boys. But by boys, he meant Eric and Jason. When Eric made varsity as a sophomore, Dad grilled steaks. When Jason scored a touchdown, Dad bought him a new pair of cleats. I got straight A's in algebra and handed over my report card with a shy smile. Dad muttered, "Us good, son," without looking up from the TV. On my 14th birthday, I asked for a soldering kit. He gave me a basketball and said, "Time to toughen you up." I wasn't ungrateful, I just didn't fit. I liked wires and logic boards, not tailgates and wrestling practice. Mom would try to balance it all out, sneaking me art supplies, helping me pick out programming books from the library. But she never stood up to him. I don't blame her. Dad had a presence that filled every room, and a temper that could flash without warning. Dinner conversations revolved around Eric's firehouse stories or Jason's coaching stats. If I tried to talk about something I'd built, Dad would cut in with, "That's nice, Tom, but what do you actually do with it?" It was like he couldn't hear me, or worse, didn't want to. So I stopped talking. I stopped trying to make him proud. I turned inward and started building things just for me. By 16, I'd rigged our garage fan to run off solar power. By 18, I'd coded a tool to troubleshoot HVAC systems for fun. Nobody noticed, but that was okay. I was learning something they never taught me in that house. Silence can sharpen you, especially when the world refuses to listen. One day, they'd hear me, loud and clear. I moved out the day I turned 20. Dad didn't say much, just tossed me a box of tools and muttered, "Figure it out." I took that as a blessing. I got a job working HVAC for a local contractor, crawling through attics in the dead of summer, busting my knuckles on old ductwork. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills. Nights were different. While my brothers were out living the life, Jason coaching, Eric drinking beers with the boys, I sat alone in my apartment with a cheap laptop and a second-hand router, teaching myself how to code. No one knew. I didn't post about it, didn't brag, didn't even mention it when we met for family dinners. What would have been the point? They thought coding was just typing fast. But while they were collecting praise, I was quietly collecting something else. Skill ones. I built a small diagnostic tool for HVAC systems, an app that could cut service time in half. At first it was just for fun, a puzzle to solve. But then I used it on a job and saved my boss a full day's labor. He was impressed, offered me a raise I hadn't even asked for. That's when I knew I was onto something. I spent the next 3 years refining the app, testing it in the field, fixing bugs after work, watching tutorials till 2 a.m. I filed for a business license, built a prototype, pitched it to a few local contractors. Most laughed me off, one didn't. That first client paid $2,000, 0 cents for a beta version. I reinvested every dime. Didn't upgrade my car. Didn't tell my family. Just kept building. Meanwhile, Jason had a local sponsorship deal for his high school team. Eric made the newspaper again for saving a cat from a burning shed. I attended every dinner, every birthday, nodding, smiling, clapping when expected. Nobody asked what I was up to, and I never offered, because deep down, I'd stopped needing their attention. What I was building wasn't for applause. It was for me. And one day, it was going to be so big, so undeniable, that they couldn't look past me even if they tried. By 27, I'd signed a contract with the city's facilities department. My software would be used in all municipal HVAC inspections. It was the kind of win that should have felt like a finish line. Instead, it felt like just another quiet checkpoint. I'd hired 5 full-time developers, rented a modest office on the south end of town, and filed my first real tax return under the business name Ray Logic System. We'd cleared nearly $300,000, 0 cents in revenue that year. I celebrated by buying a better coffee maker for the team and replacing my truck's bald tires. That Thanksgiving, I showed up to dinner with a gift for Mom. A new oven, programmable, energy efficient. She teared up. Dad didn't even glance at it. Sat in his chair, beer in hand, retelling Jason's 3rd overtime win and laughing about Eric's recent pull from a flipped ATV. When I mentioned my new contract, he grunted. "That's good, son," and turned to refill his drink. Not one question, not even a follow-up. At the table, Uncle Don asked what I did now, and before I could answer, Dad cut in with a smirk. "Tommy does some kind of tech stuff. Fixes thermostats with a laptop, I think." Everyone laughed. I didn't. I looked at my plate and swallowed more than just food. They still saw me as the indoor one, the soft one, the mystery son who didn't quite fit the mold. Never mind that my software was being installed in over 50 government buildings. Never mind that I had employees with families relying on me. In their eyes, I was still just Tommy, and part of me had accepted that. But the other part, the one that had grown sharper in silence, stronger in solitude, kept notes. I remembered every dismissal, every snub, not out of bitterness, but clarity. If they couldn't celebrate my wins, I'd stopped inviting them to the game. I wasn't building for their applause anymore. I was building something bigger than pride. I was building proof, not for them, because of them. I didn't plan it out of spite. I just saw an opportunity and took it. Rayburn Mechanical, the company where Dad had worked for 28 years, was going under. Poor management, outdated systems, no digital infrastructure. Word got out that they were bleeding contracts and desperate for a buyout. I sat with it for a week, watching old memories surface. That company was his second home, his pride. The place he boasted about every Sunday dinner. "Built this town's bones," he'd say, cracking a beer and acting like he laid the copper lines himself. And now it was collapsing under the weight of its own arrogance. A friend in contracting tipped me off. Said they were quietly entertaining offers. So I made one. Not as Thomas Rayburn, son of the floor manager. As Thomas L. Ray, owner of Ray Logic Holdings, a private acquisition group I'd formed a year prior for long-term investments. Clean, discreet, strategic. Within 60 days, the deal was done. I was now the majority owner of Rayburn Mechanical. The signatures on the dotted line had no idea that Tom Ray was the same kid who used to sweep the garage floor in silence while his dad barked orders nearby. I didn't rush to tell anyone. Instead, I spent time studying the company from the inside. how outdated it was, how its workers were overworked and underpaid. My father? Still there 3 days a week, semi-retired but still loud in meetings, still stuck in 1992. He had no clue that the new ownership had already approved system-wide updates, including phasing in my own software. The final piece came when the company invited stakeholders and family to the annual end-of-year appreciation dinner. Usually small, casual, held in a rented VFW hall. This year, I offered to host it. Quietly funded a proper venue, upgraded the catering, dressed it up as Rayburn's revival, told the team I'd make a surprise announcement. Nobody questioned it, not even my father, who joked that some hotshot investor was probably going to shake things up. He was right. But he didn't know the investor had grown up under his roof. Watching, listening, waiting. The night of the dinner felt like standing at the edge of something permanent. The venue was a rented hall dressed up to look a bit more high-end. Soft lights, crisp tablecloths, a jazz trio instead of the usual iPhone playlist. Workers brought their spouses. A few vendors and city officials trickled in, curious about the revamp. My name was nowhere on the invitation. I was just the sponsor. A silent backer in the eyes of the staff. Dad showed up wearing his best flannel, still too stubborn for a blazer. He shook hands like he owned the place, laughing loud, patting backs, telling folks how he'd helped build this company from the ground up. I stood off to the side, sipping black coffee and watching it unfold like a play I'd already memorized. My brothers came too, Eric in his firehouse jacket, Jason fresh from football practice. They were introduced with applause. Heroes, someone called them. Dad raised his glass and beamed. When the MC stepped up to the mic, I knew it was time. Tonight, we're proud to introduce the new owner of Rayburn Mechanical, the man who believes in preserving legacy while building the future. That was my cue. I walked up slowly, calm, collected, every step echoing louder than the last. The room fell quiet. My dad's smile faltered. Eric's jaw dropped. Jason muttered, "No way." I took the mic and nodded to the crowd. Some of you know me as Thomas Rayburn, I began. Some of you might not remember me at all. But for the last 10 years, I've been working quietly, building tools to make trades work smarter, not harder. This company, Rayburn Mechanical, has always been in my blood. And now it's in my hands. A ripple went through the room. I paused, scanning faces. My dad, Hank Rayburn, spent nearly 3 decades here. He taught me the bones of this work, whether he realized it or not, and I'm proud to say the company he gave so much to will now carry on, stronger and more modern than ever. Applause broke out. Some stood. Dad didn't move. He sat there like someone had unplugged him, his eyes locked on mine, confused, maybe ashamed, but mostly stunned. When I stepped down, the CEO of a partner firm clapped me on the back and said, "Hell of the moment, son." But I wasn't doing it for the moment. I was doing it because I'd waited my entire life to be seen. And now, there was no looking away. He caught me in the parking lot after the dinner, just as I was unlocking my truck. The air was thick with silence and confusion. The crowd had thinned, most folks still buzzing from the reveal, but Dad's boots crunched on the gravel like thunder. "Tommy," he said, voice low and sharp, like he used to get when he was about to lecture. I turned slowly. He wasn't angry, not the kind of angry I was used to. He looked off balance. "You made me look like a damn fool in there," he said. "Couldn't even tell your own father what you were planning?" I met his eyes and kept my voice calm. "You never listened when I did." He scoffed, running a hand through his thinning hair. "You blindsided me. You could have at least warned me." "Warned you?" I took a step closer. "You mean like how you warned me when you introduced my brothers at every dinner table and skipped my name? Like when you told folks I was the indoor one? The disappointment?" His face twitched, but he didn't speak. "I gave you everything tonight," I continued, quieter now. "Respect, credit, dignity. I didn't humiliate you. I lifted up the place you loved and let you stand tall in it. But I wasn't going to keep begging you to notice me. You think this makes you better than me? He snapped. No, I said. I think this makes me different from you. You needed people to see your work to feel proud. I built in the dark. I just wanted you to care. His shoulders slumped then, just slightly, but enough. He looked like a man who was starting to realize he'd misjudged the story all along. So what now? He muttered. You cutting me out? I shook my head. No, you'll stay on the books as a consultant, part-time. I'm not here to erase you, Dad. I'm just done waiting for your approval. He stared at me, something unreadable flashing in his eyes. Then he turned and walked to his truck, started it without another word, and drove off into the night. I watched his tail lights disappear, feeling something crack open inside me. Not anger, not victory, just relief. For the first time in my life, I hadn't needed his permission to be proud. The weeks that followed felt like stepping into a new pair of boots, unfamiliar at first, but mine all the same. I didn't strut or boast, I just showed up, early, steady, focused. We overhauled Rayburn Mechanical from the inside out. Outdated clipboards were replaced with tablets. My diagnostic software was integrated into every service truck. The older guys grumbled at first, but when they saw how it shaved hours off their day, they came around. I met with the crew weekly, not from a corner office, but right in the shop. I listened, adjusted, made it clear this company wasn't about a legacy. It was about the people, sweating through every job. I kept Dad on payroll, as promised, gave him a desk, called him senior advisor. He came in 3 days a week, mostly quiet, sometimes awkward. He didn't say much, but he showed up. That was something. We never had a big heart-to-heart. That wasn't his way. But one day, I caught him showing another tech how to use the new tablet system. And he said, "My boy built this, you know." He didn't know I was standing behind him. I didn't interrupt. I just nodded to myself and kept walking. That moment was enough. I used some of my earnings to buy a little house outside town. Nothing fancy. Just peaceful, a back porch with a view of the woods. I built a small workshop out back, stocked it with tools, parts, and every version of my app since version 1. On weekends, I started mentoring local kids who liked tech but didn't fit the mold. The ones who felt invisible. I told them what no one told me growing up. You don't have to be loud to lead. You just have to last. I didn't need headlines. I didn't need a seat at the family table. I'd built my own. Stronger. Quieter. Mine. For the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to be someone else's son. I was just Thomas. And that was finally enough. I used to think legacy meant living up to someone else's name, earning their praise, carrying their torch. But now I know better. Legacy isn't what you inherit. It's what you build when no one's watching. It's the late nights, the quiet wins, the resilience forged in rooms where no one clapped. My father gave me his silence, and I turned it into strength. I don't need a statue or a headline. I built something that lasts. And more importantly, I became a man who sees value in the overlooked. That's my legacy. And I carry it, proudly, in my own name. This story is a reminder that not all battles are fought with noise, and not all victories are public. Thomas Rayburn's journey shows us that the quiet ones, the overlooked sons, the indoor kids, can carry fire in their bones. When the world, especially family, refuses to see your worth, you can either crumble or build. And what Thomas built wasn't just a company. It was dignity, self-respect, and a legacy forged on his own terms. He didn't scream for approval. He worked in silence until the world had no choice but to listen. And when the moment came, he didn't humiliate anyone. He led with strength, vision, and grace. The lesson is clear. You don't need permission to be powerful. If you've ever felt invisible, underestimated, or dismissed, let this story be your spark. Build, grow, rise, because your value isn't determined by who sees you. It's revealed by what you create when no one does. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs a reminder of their worth. Like the video, hit that subscribe button for more stories of strength and redemption, and leave a comment below, because your story matters too.